A teen assassin who killed 17 people. We on our documentary shit tonight, man. Hold on.
From a long-range rifle, tears through his abdomen, and leaves him bleeding on the floor. As his aunt nurse races against time, bound for the emergency room, praying that her nephew will survive. The first question on anyone's mind would be why? Why would anyone target a child with that amount of firepower? But Iran Brown's aunt knew better. There was no method to this madness. Her nephew was just another unfortunate yet random victim of a coordinated killing spree that was ravaging the Washington metropolitan area. And as the police would rightfully fear, her sweet nephew wouldn't be the last.
What's going on?
Welcome back to Twisted Minds. My name is James, and today we are going to deep dive into the cold and dreadful violent case of the DC snipers.
Oh, this the DC sniper? Oh, I know about this. I know about the DC snipers.
From a sinister perspective, the events of the DC sniper case couldn't be more timely. In the year 2002, Americans were still recovering from both the shock of 9/11 and the anthrax attacks. So, when some unknown snipers started gunning people at random on the streets of DC in that same year, it was as if someone had revived a very familiar fear.
Nah, they was moving dusty. I ain't gonna lie. The DC sniper was moving dusty. That nigga had his son moving crazy. His son trying to get out of jail right now type shit. He trying to get out. They not letting that nigga out. They're not letting that nigga out.
Same year, it was as if someone had revived a very familiar fear. Our case begins in Montgomery County, a peaceful suburban town just north of Washington, D.C. The county was known for its affluent residents, serene and safe environment, the ideal bubble for raising kids in an increasingly violent America. However, on the 2nd of October 2002, that bubble would burst. At around 7:41 a.m., a family man named James Martin was getting groceries for his wife and an 11-year-old son when a high-caliber bullet ripped through his chest. He died within minutes. At the time of the shooting, the police were confused. This was not the kind of crime one would expect in a neighborhood like theirs. It had never happened in the county before, and this would be an unexpected first. The police combed the area for bullet casings, but they didn't find anything.
Like, comment, subscribe, man. I gotta remember to do this in the beginning, man. We live on Kick. This is why we just vibing. I don't be I know I'm recording, but I don't be remembering to do all the blah 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 and all that dumb shit. But like the video, man. Follow the Kick, all that shit, bro. Squeeze reacts. Follow the Kick. We live late night. Late night. I gotta show you that shit too. At this, I'll show you.
No evidence, no clues, just questions. On the 3rd of October, while police were still pondering the killing of the day before, an emergency call came out that cut the Montgomery Police Department where it hurt. A woman had spotted her neighbor bleeding on his lawn next to his lawnmower. The victim was Sonny Buchanan, and he was the son of former Montgomery County police officer. The woman thought it was the lawnmower that had cut him, but when paramedics arrived, they quickly realized that it was far from a domestic incident. Like James Martin from the day before, Sonny Buchanan had also been shot in the chest, and by the time he got to the emergency room, his body was completely drained of blood. At this point, the situation was putting the police on edge. The case was escalating a little too quickly for them to catch up. Less than an hour later, at around 8:12 a.m., another emergency.
Bro, niggas had these niggas, this little nigga he was in the trunk sniping shit. Pops just pulling up, parking. Yeah, you see them right over there? Yeah, that couple right there. Yeah, shoot. Yo, bro, I saw this shit when I was in jail. I watched this shit when I was in jail. Not this same one right here, but like a documentary on these niggas when I was in jail. And I was like, oh, nah, he nigga bug. He is a bug out. Pop's crazy as hell, too. Son dumb young. Son young as hell. Got that nigga out there. Chill. Nigga had a hole in the trunk. In the back, like type shit. They gonna show that shit. They gotta show how he
Call
doing
came in. This time, it was a 54-year-old taxi driver named Prem Kumar Waklekar. Prem was pumping gas when a bullet tore through his chest, also killing him. 2 brutal murders in under an hour. The PD was in an uproar. And yet, the killings were not even done for the morning.
What?
As the police rushed to the site of that scene, with just 30 minutes from the last murder, another call came in. This time, it was Sarah Ramos, a 34-year-old babysitter. She was waiting at a bus stop on a bench reading a book when a bullet shattered her skull and exited through her neck. Someone was targeting citizens and they didn't know who or why. Radio traffic tore through airwaves as police rushed to the scenes of the crime. If they were confused and concerned...
Yo, you know this was like... This shit probably was up in the uproar. This shit was in the uproar. You already know this shit was on... Yo, nigga. It's early in the morning, nigga. Nigga killed over here. A few miles down the road, another body. 30 minutes later. Shit spooky outside, nigga. Shit spooky outside. Nigga just shooting niggas. I'm staying my ass inside.
Before, now they were getting pretty desperate. In just 2 hours, 3 brutal murders had occurred, and they were clueless as the relatives of targeted citizens had begun demanding.
These 3 niggas ain't got no ties to each other. Niggas just outside killing shit, bro. You see 3 people die one day, you start thinking like, do these 3 niggas know each other? Like, why these 3? Nah, it's just a nigga on target practice timing.
Demanding answers. And yet, the killings were still not over. A little over an hour later, at exactly 9:58 a.m., a 25-year-old lady, Lori Ann Lewis Revere.
I told you, look, this is what I'm talking about. When he said he pulled up and said, yeah, you see that couple over there? That's what Nah, I don't mean to laugh. I don't even mean to laugh. But I'm laughing because I told y'all, I remember nigga Pops pulled up. Yeah, you see that couple right there? I'm right there, yeah. Pops was mad cool with it, like on some straight crazy shit. Like, yeah, that couple right there. Yup, be easy, breathe. Whoa, like he was God, yo, bro. I was like, nah, this shit is crazy. Shit was target practice for these niggas, bro. Niggas is crazy.
Was vacuuming Cheerios from her vehicle at a Shell petrol station when a bullet also took her life. For the first time ever, the suburb was witnessing carnage, unlike anything they had ever seen before. As word spread amongst...
My son went to the suburb. He was on some, I'm killing the rich folks. He went to the suburbs to get busy. He like, yeah, I'm going to kill the motherfuckers with money. Okay.
Residents, so did the fear. Later that night, at around 9:30 p.m., the killer took out their final victim for the day, Pascal Charlotte, a 72-year-old retired carpenter who was taking a stroll on Georgia Avenue at Kalmia Road in Washington, D.C. A county that had been used to witnessing violence on a TV screen now had it served violently to them on their doorstep.
Commercial.
After the end of an unbelievably bloody day, the police began to establish their findings. All the shootings happened so far had happened within a 25-kilometer radius. All victims had been killed by a single high-caliber bullet, which indicated that the killer was a sniper, and this sniper was experienced and tidy. He would strike, then vanish into thin air, leaving no clue behind. With the victims, there was no connection. While the killings were coordinated, it still appeared random. There was no discrimination amongst the victims that would suggest a biased execution. Pascal was black and elderly. Lori Ann Lewis was both young and white. Both completely unrelated and both sharing no ties. It doesn't get more random than that. It was like the sniper was playing the lottery with lives. Those that were murdered were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Also, these victims were not robbed, which also made the motive of the sniper more obscure. Still, Police deployed SWAT teams into the community. Undercover.
Nah, real shit though. Living in these times, this is scary as hell. This is scary as hell, bro. I ain't gonna lie. This should have had me in the crib. Cause niggas don't even know where he's shooting from. Niggas don't know what's going on, bro. Bodies is just dropping. That's it. Your ass walk to the store and be toast. Over, nigga. Finito.
Undercover cops were sent into areas where the violence had occurred and its surrounding areas. The police also worked with the best snipers to determine how this killer was operating. How did the killer wreak those attacks?
This shit was after 9/11. This shit was, yeah, you can't even go to the grocery store. They killed motherfuckers, they killed it at the grocery store. Bro, nigga just parked up. Nigga just parked up, tweaking.
Undetected. It was the suburbs, so there were no woods in any of the kill spots and no tall buildings that they could have used to shoot from. It was during these debates amongst themselves that the police realized that the killer might be in a vehicle. A witness had spoken of a white panel truck in the area when the fourth victim was killed. According to the witness, after Sarah Ramos got a bullet through the head, they saw a white panel pickup truck leaving the vicinity. Immediately, the police kicked into action and began searching every white van and every white panel pickup truck they could find. As police searched for the van, the 5 bodies were taken in for autopsy. The community was paralyzed with fear. In less than 48 hours, 6 innocent people had been killed, and yet the police had no suspects,
no clues,
no motive, and no clues. However, the worst...
Bro, if them niggas would have just stopped, they would have had 6 bodies, like... Not caught nothing. If they would have just stopped, all right, we did enough. We did enough. The niggas just was going crazy. Hey, keep going. They was on some DJ Khaled shit. Keep going!
Feeling was the fact that every resident felt like they could be the next victim to suffer the sniper's bullet.
Okay.
The Montgomery County Police Chief, Charles Moose, assigned his most qualified detective, Barney Forsythe, to lead the investigation. Their first major decision was to share as much
police scared too, nigga. Y'all niggas will snipe your ass too. Police better chill the fuck out.
Information they could with the public. Schools went into lockdown. Armed guards patrolled the vicinity, and the first clues presented itself. The bullets were traced to a long-range rifle, a weapon like a Bushmaster. Now, Bushmasters are the kind of military rifles that are designed for one specific purpose. In the hands of anyone, even the untrained, the weapon could be lethal. After the trajectory analysis came in, it confirmed the police's earlier fears. The bullet was coming from someone on the ground, not from any rooftops or elevated pedestal. The person was mobile, and this led to the next suspicion. There were 2 individuals involved in this mindless mayhem. When the community caught wind of the fact that an armed sniper was hiding in a vehicle, the residents of Washington entered into a state of panic. The press didn't help either. There were speculations in the paper, on the news, and they were mostly pointing in one direction: the infamous Al-Qaeda. It seemed like a convenient explanation, and there was no way to confirm it, but that didn't stop the press from...
What? Niggas would have swore this was Bin Laden. I thought this was about RP, my nigga Bin Laden, man. They thought this was Bin Laden. They thought Bin Laden was spinning. This shit real. They thought Bin Laden was spinning, nigga.
Stoking fear.
I thought my soul was spinning, nigga. They said, oh, nah, he moving dusty. Oh, shit, he moving dusty.
October 4th, the sniper changed tactics.
And it's in D.C. trying to get the president?
The victim of the day was Caroline Sewell, a 43-year-old homemaker. She was loading packages into her minivan in the parking lot of Michael's Craft Store in Fredericksburg, Virginia, when the cold bullet of the deranged sniper tore.
These niggas handing up the whole DMV. Them niggas said, we all through this shit. D.C., we in Virginia, Baltimore.
As she lied on the floor bleeding, she prayed that she would live for her 2 children. Thankfully, she survived.
Wow.
This marked the first
God bless. God bless her, man.
Survivor of the October attacks. Once again, the police were left with nothing. The criminals had once again vanished. Detectives were mystified. No physical description, no good eyewitnesses. It was like they were chasing a ghost. It was at this junction that Police Chief Moose decided to throw all of his weight on the public. He called out to them for help. A tip line was released, and immediately it was overwhelmed by callers. Some people were convinced that they had seen something relating to the snipers, and others had ideas of how to catch the criminals. At one point, the police department received over 100,000 tips. Detectives began working around the clock, trying to follow every worthwhile lead. They noticed that the attacks were close to roadways, strip malls, and certain stores. They also noticed that the killer or killers were very familiar with the traffic patterns in the area. After studying these movements closely, the police devised a method for trapping the sniper. They called it the concentric circle plan, and it would involve the immediate deployment of a response team at the ring of an emergency call. Once the emergency call comes in, the police team would create a trap consisting of a series of widening circles around whatever area the shooting happened. They would roadblock every exit and floor in the premise with plainclothes operatives. In the first 2 days, the shootings had been contained within the Montgomery axis. However, with the killing in Virginia, the radius had expanded. The killer could be anywhere. There was a debate about whether schools should remain open or not. So far, no child had been targeted by the sniper, so it was decided that schools would remain open, but kids would remain indoors. There would be no recess. The authorities believed this would keep the kids safe.
Dusty. All that school shooting.
On the 7th of October, a 13-year-old Iran Brown had been kicked off his school bus for eating candy. His aunt now had the task of dropping him off. She dropped him off in front of school an hour early because she was getting late for work, and that is when it happened. The sniper gunned down the 13-year-old and left him bleeding on the pavement. His aunt raced through traffic and was able to get her nephew into an emergency room. The boy eventually became the second survivor of the DC sniper, but the gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone. The President of the United States at the time, George Bush, condemned the attack.
Yeah, the sniper attacks, first of all, I'm just sick to my stomach to think that there is a cold-blooded killer at home taking innocent life. You know, the idea of moms taking their kids to school and sheltering them from a potential sniper attack is not the American I know.
The police department was devastated. Targeting a child, that was lower than anyone had expected.
I don't remember that.
In the 5 days since the mayhem began, there had been 7 shooting incidents in the Washington, D.C. area. Now, the FBI got in on the case. A $200,000 reward was offered to anyone who had information concerning the shootings. The FBI would soon suspect that this was not the antics of just one killer, but rather a duo or group of vicious criminals. Investigators also undertook what was called a forensic walk, which involved them walking slowly, shoulder to shoulder, through the area around the shooting. They found a flattened out area in the shrubs that looked like someone had laid there. However, the most intriguing find was a mysterious tarot card that had a direct message for the police. It read, "For you, Mr. Police Code, call me God. Do not release to the press." The eeriness of this message wasn't lost on the police. These killers were not asking for anything still, and that was a problem. However, it was a step in the right direction. The police could establish a line of communication. The police also wanted to honor the requests of the killers. They weren't going to leak anything to the press. However, that was next to impossible, and by the next day, it was on the front page of the Washington Post.
Somebody about to die.
On the 9th of October, 53-year-old vet Dean Myers was driving home on his way from Virginia to Maryland. It was around 8 p.m. that night. He had stopped to get gas and was pumping it into his car when a .223 caliber bullet ripped through his skull. The police responded by deploying more than 200 investigators to the case. On the 11th of October, Ken Bridges was also at a petrol station in Virginia when he was shot by a sniper. By the 14th, the FBI were the ones who took a hit. Ted Franklin and his wife Linda were loading some newly acquired shelves into their vehicle. Linda—
The crazy is, bro, this is a pops and a son. So the son was like 14 when he did this shit, 15. The kid was young as fuck. He was like 14, 15. Pops trained that nigga for fucking failure. The fucking lame ass Pops.
Linda was an FBI analyst, remarried, a mother of one, and an expected grandmother. All it took for her to be a victim was to stand still for some— an expected grandmother. All it took for her to be a victim was to stand still for some seconds as her husband tried to find a way to fit in the shelves. A bullet blew off the right side of her head. She was the 11th victim of the DC sniper. The FBI responded by lobbying the Department of Defense to approve the use of sophisticated military spy planes with high-tech surveillance gear to hunt down the sniper. Meanwhile, the police released sketches of a white van. Eventually, on the 16th of October, hope arrived in the form of a witness. A man named Matthew Dowdy gave a description of a Middle Eastern man taking a shot. He said he saw a hardware store close to the vicinity. He also reported that he had seen a white or cream-colored van with a burnt-out rear light. The police immediately informed the public to be on the lookout. However, 2 days later, a detective was reviewing the surveillance tapes from the hardware store when they noticed that Dowdy had appeared on the videotape at 9:21 p.m., which was 3 minutes after the shooting. There was no way he could have seen the killer. Matthew Dowdy was just hungry for media attention, and he was promptly arrested. Once again, the investigators were back to square one. The police ran through all the suspects in surveillance tapes and came up with absolutely nothing. However, there was still another silver lining. A man named Robert Holmes was watching coverage of the DC sniper shootings when he had something of an epiphany. He realized that the killer might have been his buddy John Muhammad from their days in the army. He also remembered that John owned a long-range rifle, like the one in the news. If John was the DC sniper, then Robert could also establish a motive.
See, look, I ain't remember none of that. His old, damn, man. I guess he did the right thing, I guess. But if that nigga didn't recognize, that shit is crazy, bro. How this nigga just all of a sudden like, I was in the army with this nigga, he had this kind of gun. Like, come on, bro. Like, them niggas probably would have still been killing shit. Them niggas was low. Nah, they probably not still. I'm capping, but they would have had some more bodies though. Him and his son.
No matter how far-fetched it might have sounded, John had an estranged wife who had taken custody of their kids and moved to the DC, Washington area. So Robert Holmes called the tip line, but unfortunately, his tip was missed. During the same time, the sniper was also trying to communicate with the police, but he couldn't. There were just too many tips coming in. To make the situation more complicated, there were multiple callers who were also trying to take credit for the crimes. So the killer began to get desperate. As twisted as this might sound, he became concerned that someone else was going to take praise for all of the killings. So, the next time he called, he brought up an unsolved shooting in Montgomery, Alabama that happened earlier that year and asked the police to look into the shooting. The police called Montgomery and found out that it was a robbery homicide and that the gun used in the crime was not a high-caliber rifle. The police didn't see any connections. Aside from the different weapons used, the sniper hadn't robbed any of his victims. So, it didn't stick and the police disregarded the caller. On the 9th of October, Jeff Hopper and his wife, Stephanie, were driving to their home in Florida when they pulled off the interstate highway some 150 kilometers south of Washington to fill up their car and have dinner. In their minds, they were clear of the danger zone. They finished their dinner, held hands, and made their way to the car when they heard a gunshot. It took a moment for Jeff to realize that he had been shot in the abdomen, and it took 5 operations and another 18 days for him to survive the attempt on his life. This would mark the 3rd survivor of the DC snipers. During the investigation on this particular shooting, an ATF dog found a bullet casing and a note tacked to a tree in the woods near the restaurant. The killer was making a very direct method of communication. The note was tucked inside a Ziploc bag, and that was how the killer slipped. This is because police found the DNA on the Ziploc bag. Unfortunately, the DNA didn't match anyone in the FBI's database. In the note, there was a message. It had the same "Call Me God" calling card of the killer, and this time, for the first time, the killer was demanding money. Specifically, $10 million that would be deposited in a bank account. It was at that point that the police knew they would catch the killer. The sniper also wrote that at 6 a.m., they would call the restaurant where Jeffrey Hopper was shot. The police department got ready for the call.
He's a dickhead. Nigga wanted to go to jail.
On the morning of the 21st of October, the phone rang, and finally, police and the sniper were in direct contact. The sniper told police to follow the content in the note. They had to follow all of his demands or more people would be killed. Then, he ended the note with a chilling warning. P.S. Your children are not safe. The police were able to track the call to a petrol station. There, they arrested 2 men. One of the men was driving a white panel truck. They fit the description, but it turned out that they were just illegal immigrants who happened to be near the phone at the wrong time. In the sniper's note, there was also the mention of the Alabama shooting, so the police decided to call Alabama once more, and this time, they broke through a brick wall in the case. It happens that a magazine had been dropped at the crime scene, and it had a fingerprint on it, which the local officer had not yet processed. The magazine was immediately flown to Washington, and the fingerprint got a match. A boy named Lee Boyd Malvo. Lee Boyd Malvo was a 17-year-old Jamaican who had been fingerprinted by immigration officers in Washington. This find was a combination of luck, diligence, and stupidity on the part of the sniper. The police were banking on more stupidity on his part. However, they believed the teenager was just an accomplice. On the 22nd of October, in the heart of Montgomery County, a bus driver named Conrad Johnson was preparing for the morning commuter run when the killer added him to his rap sheet. Conrad Johnson, just 35, was a father of 2.
Crazy.
The cold-hearted killer tacked a new message to a tree that read, "Your incompetence has cost you another life." As infuriating as the message was, the police channeled it into their search efforts. They had a confirmed fingerprint. They had a picture that all linked to the teenager Lee Boyd Malvo. The FBI came with some in-depth info concerning the kid. Aside from his immigration status, it was also revealed that there had been a custody battle between Malvo's mother and an African-American named John Muhammad. Muhammad had helped Malvo and his mom illegally cross from the Caribbean into the US, and since then, Lee Malvo and John Muhammad had passed off as father and son. The FBI were also able to filter through the tips and uncover the tip of Robert Holmes. Muhammad Malvo and John Muhammad had passed off as father and son. The FBI were also able to filter through the tips and uncover the tip of Robert Holmes, Muhammad's friend. His tip literally tied up all the ends. John Muhammad was Robert Holmes' longtime friend from the army. They were very close. When Robert heard the voice of the serial killer, he immediately recognized him to be Lee Malvo, a kid that had been hanging out with Muhammad. To tie things up neatly, Holmes also gave the police a possible motive. He said that John had lost custody of his kids to his ex-wife Mildred, who had relocated the kids to Washington to avoid as much of John's eccentricities as she could. Days and weeks of dead ends disappeared in an instant. The police were able to get comprehensive details of both suspects, including their vehicle that was registered to John Muhammad, a blue Chevy Caprice. The police immediately put out the word. Citizens should watch out for a blue Chevy Caprice.
They on
A day after the police put out the call, on the 24th of October, Whitney Donahue was working late when he was too tired to continue and decided to go home. The time was 11:39 p.m. and the home was still hours ahead, so he decided to turn on the radio to help him stay awake while driving. This is when he heard the announcement. The police were looking for a blue Chevy Caprice. Whitney had owned a Chevy Caprice in the past, so he knew what it would look like if he saw one. Subconsciously, he started checking out the cars as he went in toward the Beltway. And when he got on Route 70, he decided to stop at the rest area on South Mountain. That was when he saw it, a dark blue Chevy Caprice. It perfectly fits the description, so he pulled up in front of the vehicle, picked up his cell phone, and called 911. Lee Malvo and John Muhammad were asleep in the vehicle when the full force of the police descended upon them. 21 days of senseless terror had finally come to an end. Lee Malvo was just a 17-year-old teenager.
Niggas got caught up sleeping in the car. Y'all niggas out here killing shit. Sleeping in the car? You niggas couldn't get a telly?
At the time, and John Allen Muhammad was a 40-year-old man. It was found that John had trained him for weeks to execute the crimes. Also, before the shootings in October, Muhammad and Malvo had also shot 6 people between February to around October. The shootings were so few and far in between when compared to the October serial shootings that the killers were able to slip under the radar undetected.
They were just smoking
Through
shit.
the October killings, they had drilled a hole in the trunk of the Caprice that allowed for Lee Malvo to contort himself as John Muhammad took the wheels. During interrogations, Malvo refused to talk at first. However, when he began talking, he would begin to brag. He talked about how he would fast before each killing because it improved his aim. He also spoke about how they planned to execute 5...
Nigga said he will fast before execution. Help his aim. Noted.
killing because it
Just
improved
play.
his aim. He also spoke about how they planned to execute 5 killings in one day in an effort to overwhelm the police. Then, he began speaking about his relationship with John Allen Muhammad. Sometimes he would call him father, and other times he would call him his best friend. He said that Muhammad taught him everything he knew. The investigators believed the killing spree was a twisted plot by John Muhammad to kill his ex-wife and get his children back. Their first victim in February was the niece of a friend of his ex-wife, who had convinced her to relocate to Washington. His plan must have been to include her as one of the random victims, thereby giving him a path toward reclaiming his kids. Muhammad neither confirmed or denied this theory, and it fell through the court because there was not enough evidence to back up the claim. However, John tried representing himself, but that turned out to be a crucial nail in his almost certain coffin. In 2004, John Allen was later sentenced to death by a Virginia court, and on the 10th of November, he was executed by lethal injection.
He dead. Hey, that nigga was a death penalty. He got life.
On the other hand, Lee Malvo continued to spill. In his testimony, he spoke about Muhammad's multi-phase plan. Phase 1 consisted of meticulous planning. They were supposed to kill 6 white people a day for 30 days, but that didn't work out because several logistical issues like heavy traffic, a clear line of shot, and an escape route at their kill spots. They ended up resorting to the equally devastating mayhem of October. Then there was also Phase 2 that was supposed to happen after the events of October in Baltimore, Maryland. These sick and twisted individuals planned to kill a pregnant woman by shooting her in the stomach. Then they would shoot a Baltimore police officer, after which they would plant and detonate the funeral service, which would have several other officers present. The third and last phase was where the 10 million would come in handy. They were going to extort millions from the US government, then travel north to Canada. Somewhere along the way, they would stop.
Them niggas is about to pull up to Canada and move Dusty. SK like, thank God them niggas got that nigga. Niggas said, thank God them niggas got that nigga, man.
At an orphanage or YMCA and recruit impressionable young black boys, which John would then brainwash as he did for Malvo. After which, they would go all the way to Canada, train in weapons and stealth, then unleash unprecedented chaos in many different cities in America. Thankfully, none of that happened. The 17-year-old Lee Boyd Malvo received a life sentence 2 years later. A Maryland court sentenced him to 6 consecutive life terms, and the carnage of October 2002 was filed into the annals of history. Thanks for tuning in to Twisted Minds. That was the case of the DC Sniper. And why don't you go ahead and click on one of the 2...
That was fire. That was fire. Crazy. We had to watch another one on the DC Sniper. That shit ain't give us all the information.